So I just remembered that this book also intimidated me because it doesn't have any pictures. Yes, I know that's a very childish thing, but for all the books that I've done in this dramatic reading series thus far, I've been able to just like record the audio and put the illustrations on screen, which was kind of like I don't want to say like a coping mechanism, but it was kind of my way of like separating myself from the dramatic reading. Like when I was recording the audio, I wasn't thinking about, hey, this is for a video. I was just thinking about giving a good dramatic reading performance. And now this book doesn't have illustrations, so I'm just going to like have to record myself reading it like with a camera because we'll have to have visuals, and I feel like it would be weird just to have like the cover picture the whole time. Maybe there are pictures in this. Maybe I'm over stating it. No, there really aren't any pictures. There's just like small pictures because this technically is like this is for ages 10 and up, and it barely has any pictures. What 10-year-old is reading books without pictures? Why are all the books that I'm picking up nowadays that are thick are like advanced reading group books for 10-year-olds? Why? 10-year-olds like pictures too. Just saying. I feel like people are expecting kids to be way more mature with their books. Maybe that's why no kids are interested in reading anymore, because we're making books boring. Okay, I feel like I'm just procrastinating by overanalyzing. I just gotta do it. Just do it. Nike style. Okay. I need more light up in here. Do I have my screen at full brightness? I do. Okay. Young Wit, The Thieves of Barrymore, written by Dave Arnold and Phil Lawler. Chapter 1. October 29th, 1935. A serpentine wire crossed the dark room. At one end of the wire, behind a file cabinet, a man hunched over a small metal box. Another man stood beside him, barking out orders. "Aren't you done yet?" he scolded in a whisper. "You want to do it yourself, Ray? Have at it. Otherwise, go check the connection." Ray thought hard about cuffing Harry, a Dickinson-looking character, slight of build, but wiry and reminiscent of a clown who'd forgotten to apply his makeup. Ray finessed himself the brain and Harry the brawn. Harry wasn't fond of the assessment. He may not be as notable as Ray, but he wasn't a slouch either. Gray growled at Harry and shoved him aside. "You check the connection." Harry complied. Following the wire's path, he bent down periodically to ensure it hadn't passed over anything damp or sharp. 20 feet later, it lifted off the ground and terminated at a towering steel door. Harry stopped, tucked his hands in his pocket, and pulled out a pack of cigarettes. He tapped the box on the side of his hand until one jutted out. He pulled it out and placed the end between his lips, tucked the pack of his trousers in his trousers pocket. and stood and took a wooden match from his shirt pocket, using his fingernail. He ignited the match and, holding it into the cigarette, inhaled until the tobacco glowed crimson. Then he held the match in front of him. On a metal door that must have been a foot thick, he saw a painted image of a house on a riverbank, adorned with scrolls around its perimeter. The details framed the words Mulsler Safe and Lock. A round cylinder as big as a saucer with numbers etched around its circumference was partly covered by the 5 sticks of dynamite he had taped beside it. Inserted into one of the sticks was the other end of the wire. Harry checked to make sure it hadn't pulled loose. It was secure. A hat slapping across his ear startled him.
You want to get caught? Put out that light, you mutton head.
Harry blew the match out, flicked it in Ray's face, and shoved him backward. Ray tumbled over the low railing surrounding the safe.
I ain't taking none of that from you. I ain't stupid.
Ray stood up, bent his face close enough to Harry that their noses almost touched, and muttered through his gritted teeth, "You're stupider than most." He grabbed Harry by the collar and stood him so hard that the cigarette fell from his mouth.
If it weren't for her, I'd... Shut up! Shut it, Harry said. Someone's coming.
Ray spun around to see a flashlight shining through the front window.
You brought the cops down on us, you idiot!
Ray scolded. Both men ran to the metal box. They had just huddled down over it when the door opened. "Who's in there? Who's in here?" a commanding voice bellowed. The click of heavy footsteps followed behind the beacon of the bobbing flashlight as it entered the building. "A copper. Nothing for now," Ray whispered bitterly. "We need to get out of here before..." A shower of sparks bursting off the floor next to the safe interrupted him. The sparks hissed and spit, speeding along the wire upward toward the dynamite.
My cigarette must have lit it! Harry spat out. Get down!
They fell to the floor just before a massive explosion rocked the building, sending the constable flying backwards. He hit hard against a table and fell limply to the floor. The dust of the explosion clouded the room, making it difficult to see.
Grab as much as you can and head for the door,
Ray coughed. The 2 men ran toward the safe. Harry stopped to discover whether the police officer was conscious. He was not, nor was he alive. The vault door hung open. By the time Harry reached it, Ray had already stuffed most of the cash into his bags they brought for the job.
Hurry, folks will be swarming in here like locusts before long.
1 minute later, they ran outside carrying the remaining hopes and dreams of the people who had managed to not lose everything when the Depression hit 6 years ago to the day. Now a new depression would claim their dreams.
I think we've clipped a copper,
Harry said, rather indifferently. He was taking over a payphone at a filling station an hour's drives away. The voice on the other end groaned.
Well, how much did you get?
Not much, he answered. The safe weren't very full.
If that copper's dead, they'll be after you. Best to split up and let things cool off a while.
I dunno, said Harry. I think we ought to hit another place tomorrow. They'd never expect it. After an awkward silence, the voice on the phone resumed. We've been testing our luck too long. I got myself a feeling, and when that happens, I listen. That means you should listen too. If you say so, Harry mumbled. Where you at? Harry looked around. Some sleepy town, don't know the name of it. Ray should steal a car and head for Chicago. You hunker down for a spell. Try to blend in. We'll meet up in Toledo after Christmas. What about you? Where are you headed? Harry asked. Don't worry about me. I'm right here where I need to be. I've got something brewing. I'll case a few banks along the way, Harry said. We'll need a lot more money than we took from that last one. Fine, but you head down. The phone clicked dead, and Harry hung up the receiver. I always do, he snarled. He walked over to the black Chevy sedan he stole a few months back and got in. Think you ought to get a different car and head to Chicago for a while. He told Ray. That's nice, Ray responded, eyes closed. But I'm more interested in Ohio. Harry scolded as he started the engine. The car backfired twice. He considered how it sounded just like his gun did when he popped that copper back in. Arkansas? Maybe? He put the car in gear and sped away down the dirt road, a plume of haze floating in its wake. Chapter 2. A moonlit shadow floated along the side of the weathered old shed behind the house where young John Avery Whittaker lived. As the figure moved, it grew taller and taller and seemed to hunch forward as if to pounce. Unaware of what was taking place outside, Johnny sat at the desk in his room working on a replica of a storm glass weather barometer fashioned in the style of the one made by Admiral Robert Fitzroy. The taciturn sailor who had commanded the HMS Beagle for the Darwin exhibition. Fitzroy was a brilliant meteorologist, and Johnny decided that since he'd been experimenting with lightning, it would be prudent to learn at least the basics about weather. Johnny dissolved correct instruments of potassium nitrate and ammonium chloride in distilled water. In a In a separate container, he mixed chloroform and ethanol. At the moment, he felt caught up in a lot more than just weather. Life in Providence had proven to be more challenging than any other time he could remember, with the lone exception of when Grandfather Jackson and his mother Janet died. There were many days when he longed for the fields of King Lassie, the little village where his family had lived in Scotland. Everything about that place seemed magical to him, and he deeply wished he could wander around the old haunts and lie in the grass at his favorite spot in a strand of trees where he used to read books and plan out his life. The world had seemed big and open and full of adventure and possibilities there. But now in Providence, he wondered if he would ever get clear of the trials and sorrows of life. It had been 2 days since the horse riding accident where his stepmother, Fiona, lost her sight. But those 2 days felt like months. As he stared vacantly out the window, a single knock tapped on the door. Before he could answer, the door opened and Harold, his father, entered, closing the door behind him. "Have you thought any more about where you might have displaced the cloth?" he said pointedly. Harold had taken a leave of absence from his duties at Duke University to take care of Fiona. Johnny wished he would just go back to work. "I didn't misplace it. I know I put it in the shed." "Well, it's not there now." "Maybe someone took it," Johnny suggested. "Oh, come on, John. Who would break into a shed to steal a piece of cloth? Unless they knew about it. No one else does, right?" I haven't told a soul but you." Yet in the back of his mind, Johnny had a gnawing feeling that he did know who took it. Professor Carl Mangle, father of his friends, Steve and Paul. At the sight of the moonshine still 9 days ago, everyone had gaped in awe when Johnny's friend Ben Huck awoke unharmed, even though they all believed he had been shot at the time. Clarence Huck's, Ben's father, proclaimed the event a miracle. As Johnny lifted the healing cloth off of Ben, he vividly recalled Mango looking straight at him and agreeing. There was something in Mangle's eyes that made Johnny uneasy, then and now. Had Mangle seen Johnny squirrel the cloth away in the shed? Maybe. He might also have made the connection between the cloth and Grandpa's journal. If he had, then it was more than likely that he had taken the cloth. He certainly had motive. A cloth with the power to heal could cure his son Steve. Harold huffed as he paced about the room. "I can't believe you'd be so careless with such a valuable artifact." Especially now, when your stepmother... He stopped, shook his head, and sighed deeply. You're sure you didn't leave it somewhere else? Yes, sir, Johnny said. A grimace formed on Harold's face. I'm sorry, John. It's not your fault. I'm just frustrated. Then, as quickly as he came, he opened the door and exited the room. Before closing the door, he added, You'd best get to bed. That shut door felt like another wall had been erected between Johnny and his father. A deep aching sorrow clouded Johnny's mind, and he found it difficult to think, let alone concentrate. Nevertheless, before climbing into bed, Johnny gathered his senses and finished the project. He slowly pondered the nitrate and ammonium solution into the ethanol and camphor solution. He then poured the mixed solution into a quart-sized mason jar and screwed the lid on, sealing it tight. It warmed to the touch. He picked up the jar and walked over to his windowsill, bending forward to set the experiment on the sill. Johnny jumped, nearly dropping the jar, when he saw a face pressed against the pane. Macduff saw it too, and yapped angrily at the interloper. Be quiet, Macduff! The pup stopped yapping, sat down on his haunches, and gave a low growl. Straightening up, Johnny looked through the window. An upturned nose fogged a small circle of the panes. Two hands cupped over a pair of brown eyes, like parentheses. Open the window! A muffled voice whispered loudly. It was Emmy. Johnny sighed, set the storm biometer on the floor, and slid the sash open. What are you doing here, Emmy? And how did you get on the roof? I climbed up the trellis the same way I've seen you climb down. I've been worried about you. I haven't seen you since school let out for Thanksgiving. Thanks, Johnny replied dully. Come on in. Emmy demurred. No, I shouldn't. It's not decent. Johnny had no idea what that meant, but didn't press the matter. How's Ben doing? Fine. He's back at school from his vacation. He took his dad to visit his mom in Mississippi, you know. Yeah, so no side effects from what happened at the still? Emmy shook her head. Not that I can tell. I didn't talk to him, but he looked happy. Last time I saw him was at school before the break, Johnny said. He asked how we knew about the still, and I told him we saw him walking into the woods behind the Granville place during my experiment. Emmy turned, thoughtful. That was such a strange day. I still can't figure out what happened. Johnny nodded. He knew what had happened, but he couldn't tell Emmy. And though that whole adventure felt so big and surreal at the time, after Fiona's accident, he'd forgotten all about it. Curious how things that seemed important, crucial in fact, become trivialities.